Joining us now, Senator Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire. She is the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Thank you so much for being here, Senator. So your Republican colleague, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, says 85 senators have signed on to a bipartisan Russian sanctions bill. And even though President Trump says Putin was throwing a lot of, quote, bullshit at him last week, the president's going to give Putin 50 days to make a deal before imposing more tariffs. Why do you think Trump is waiting, and do you think he should wait?
I don't think he should wait. The fact is, Vladimir Putin and the Russians have already had over 3 years of attacking Ukraine unprovoked, killing innocent civilians in ways that need to now end. We need to ramp up the pressure in every way we can on Russia, and so we need to take up the Graham-Blumenthal sanctions bill. As you say, it has 85 bipartisan co-sponsors. It will send a very strong message, not just to Russia, but to China, to India, to those countries who are funding Russia's war machine, that it's time to stop. We are serious. Vladimir Putin needs to come to the table. He needs to understand that it's time to end this war. He needs to get serious about negotiating.
And you led Democrats on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today to release a report that argues in the first 6 months of the Trump administration, the U.S. has ceded considerable ground to a different geopolitical threat, China. And you say that Trump's actions, such as gutting U.S. aid, the tariff war, efforts to shut down Radio Free Asia, means, quote, Chinese officials are gleeful, characterizing the United States as unreliable. Why was it important to you to focus first on the China effect of Trump's foreign policy moves rather than his approach to Russia or what's going on in the Middle East? Why was China your focus?
Well, this is the report. It's the minority report coming out of the Foreign Relations Committee. And what we have heard for a long time has been bipartisan agreement that the biggest threat to the United States is coming from China. It's an economic threat, it's a military threat. And the Trump administration has said they agree with that China is our biggest competitor, and they're trying to take advantage on the world stage. And what the Trump administration has done since President Trump took office is to roll back our ability to compete with China, whether that's been through the foreign assistance cuts, whether it's been the tariffs on our allies and partners, whether it's been rolling back our diplomatic footprint. All of that's coming at a time when China is increasing its diplomatic footprint, is coming in after the United States and picking up programs that we have stopped funding, calling the United States an unreliable partner for our allies. All of that is having an impact, and this administration doesn't have a coherent strategy. They don't have consistent messaging about how we're going to deal with China. And we should all be very concerned because there are real ramifications here at home for what's happening.
I have heard Republicans argue that Biden's withdrawal of forces from Afghanistan and the way that was done versus Trump's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities is the contrast in leadership when it comes to China, that China would be dissuaded from acting, for instance, against to seize Taiwan or any other moves because of the muscular military intervention in terms of the strikes against Iran by Trump. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I opposed the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and I supported the strikes against Iran's nuclear program. So I understand those arguments, but the reality is it doesn't help us to make those strong arguments at the same time that we have turned our backs on Ukraine, that we are reviewing programs like AUKUS that have been one of the strengths that we have in the Indo-Pacific, when we are turning our backs on our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific, in the Philippines, where there have been additional sites for the U.S. to land on in the Philippines. A lot of that has been based on support for disaster assistance to the Philippines. That's been eliminated by the Trump administration. So, it's one thing to say we're going to be strong. It's another to look at the actions of this administration. And that's what this report on China lays out. It lays out that while we all seem to agree that China is our biggest competitor, the biggest threat for the United States, there is no coherent strategy, no consistent messaging coming out of this administration. And what they have done is actually ceded ground to the Chinese at a time when we are all facing this threat, and are doing it in ways that are going to have real implications for us here at home.
Senator Jean Shaheen, Democrat from New Hampshire, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.